Hi, everybody. This is Dan Boul coming to you from 65 amps in Los Angeles, California. Today is April 24th, and I'm sitting here in my office. It is noon Pacific time, GMT minus 8. And I do this show every Wednesday at this time. For those of you watching the recording, there's a live chat window here that I really strongly encourage you to join us if you can and ask questions live. We talk about all sorts of things, as we were just discussing in the pre-show chat. We do say dirty jokes sometimes. But we're all men here, I believe, unless Anita Farragher shows up. And for the most part, we try to keep it kind of real and human. So if you're offended by innuendo, dirty jokes, and the occasional cuss word, this might not be the show for you. However, I certainly hope it is. So today, I'm still working on getting my rig going over here. I swear I'm going to be playing guitar soon, I promise. But today we're going to talk about a lot of things. One of the things that I have going crazy on Facebook right now is a couple of threads about reverb. So we're going to talk about reverb. I have questions here. For those of you who want to come in early, we usually have a little pre-show chat. And guys kind of bring up stuff they'd like me to address during the show. And the questions are wide-ranging, all to do with the guitar world. Anything inside the guitar world for the most part. And if I can answer it, I will. I've been living deep in the bowels of the guitar world for about 35 years, so I can answer. Hi, Steve Kirk. I can answer most of these questions reasonably well. Not all of them. Sometimes I just don't have an answer. So we want to talk about open back cabs, 6L6s, speaker cables, rectifiers, speaker elements, changing capacitors on your amplifier, and Alnico magnets in guitar pickups. So, and first question coming right here off the chat window from Nick S. in England. Do you find when using a reverb pedal in front of an amp that you get much more verb when switching from clean to lead? Yes, you do, because you're gaining up the amp. More gain means more everything, including reverb. So that's natural. You know, usually guys don't like to put a lot of reverb on their distortion. So if you have an amp that has a loop in it, you can put the verb in the loop. Verb is kind of that way even in a loop, though. Level goes up, reverb goes up. You know, the reverb pedals respond to the input. So when you're going to a lead, you're actually gaining up the amp. So you're putting more signal into that verb, which it will then reverberate more. Don't give up, Ustreamer699752. Keep trying. Clear the cache on your browser if you have to. But we can just call you 699752. Or if you like, we can just call you Ustreamer69. If you know what I mean. So welcome to everybody. I think we've identified 4 continents here. We have people from Europe, various parts of Europe, United Kingdom and Netherlands and Sweden, specifically that we've noticed so far. There's usually some Norwegians on here too. I hope you guys are here. We have people from the United States and Canada, Peru, Brazil, and Australia that have identified themselves, and there might be some more on here. So welcome you guys from all over the world. I really appreciate it. Martin Gooseland from Norway. See, I knew Norway's always represented here. I'm trying to get over there in May, Martin, if I can work it out. Steve Kirk says, don't yield to reverb pressure. It's no big deal. Fonzarelli says he's incontinent. All right. Well, that's between you and your doctor. Last chance, Ustreamer 080243. Knut Berga. Hey, there's multiple Norwegians. Is it getting warm in Norway yet? Norwegian slow-mo, 3 Norwegians. And a partridge in a pear tree. Passive loop versus active loop. The only real difference is that you can adjust the level on the loop, Kevin. Sound quality just depends on how well it's made. Not yet. Oh, bummer. Snow almost. There's still snow on the ground there? Oh, my goodness. Okay, so let's talk about... let's talk about a few things. First off, anybody here from Boston today? If so, congratulations. I mean, your police department is ridiculously good. I don't know if you guys have been following what happened in Boston. You know, you heard about the bombing. These two lowlife pieces of shit. One of them, they just ended. Thank you, have a nice day. By Thursday. And they caught the other one Friday, who's the little brother. They caught him alive, and he is going to live so they can kill him, which I think is awesome. I'm not a big death penalty guy. I mean, I think there's always times when it's required, but not as a general rule, you know, like do that pretty sparingly. This guy, I don't think anyone in the world would lose a minute's sleep killing this guy. There's no death penalty in Massachusetts, but there is a death penalty on the federal offense of using weapons of mass destruction. So the feds are going to take this one over. And again, I'm not a huge death penalty guy, you know. Yeah, I hear you, RJ. I mean, there's a million good reasons to argue against the death penalty, and I think it's abused and stupid for the most part. There's just certain times where it's like, yeah. But that's what they're going to do to this guy. I mean, I could be totally fine if they didn't, if they just locked him up forever. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. So, you know, for those of you, and the reason that, I shouldn't even go into it, it's politics. But, you know, these guys were so twisted and predatory. They were setting these bombs off next to people who were so exhausted they could barely move, and they couldn't even run away, and they're barely wearing any clothes because they've been running a marathon. It was just the most twisted, evil fucking thing I've ever seen. But anyway, Boston Police Department. You guys are amazing. What's funny is I know some LAPD guys, and one of them in particular used to be a Boston PD guy, and he showed me a picture of the first guy on the coroner's table, and he was messed up. Yeah, I hear you, Peter. I'm not arguing for the death penalty. I certainly didn't mean to bring that up like that. That was inappropriate. I apologize. But I just thought it was funny. They're going to keep him alive in the hospital, doctors, medicine, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get him into good shape and then kill him. I think that's kind of funny. Not funny, ha-ha, but just funny. That's like, it's kind of fucked up. But anyway, yes, death penalty. I'm kind of agnostic about it, to be honest with you, but I respect everybody's opinion on it. I didn't mean to bring it up that way and start an argument, because let's talk about guitar amps. Honestly, whatever you believe, I'm totally cool with. And I understand the arguments on both sides and respect them both very much. And that's not me being a brown noser. That's really the way I am. It's like, yeah, I get it. I see. Death to solid state. Yeah, hands up for Boston. That's right. Boston. Boston rocks, man. Those, seriously, I've never seen anything like this. They caught the guys in 4 days. And here we go. Okay, so next on my list is reverb shit. So I'm getting a lot of requests for people that want to have reverb on the amps. And as we've discussed here many times, I'm not a reverb guy. but a lot of people are. And I have pretty strong opinions about reverb, and I know how I can do it correctly, but it just raises the price on the amp, and for some people... So what I think we're going to try is to put reverb on the Ventura as a sort of test bed. I'm trying a few different things right now. I'm looking at doing a digital reverb or a spring reverb driven by a tube or driven by a FET. And I'll tell you the reasons, the pros and cons of those, let you know the process on that. And then maybe a DSP. Digital reverb's getting really darn good. Reverb is the traditional reverb, has some real design weaknesses. Excuse me. And the real weakness is the elements of the reverb. The spring and the tube. So those are the two most unpredictable, low quality, bitchy elements in amp manufacturing. And that's what you have to use to make a reverb. And that's kind of one of the reasons I stay away from it. Reverb pans, you know, with the spring in them are very different than most components in the amp. They're highly unpredictable. And so to get one good sounding reverb pan, I need to buy 5. Unless I use the little ones. The little ones are getting better. But the true, like, triple spring, big pan reverbs, man, they just don't, they're junk. And then you add that with the state of modern tubes, which are wildly, wildly unpredictable as well. It's just, you know, it's a recipe for nightmarish trouble. When you're manufacturing amps, I mean, you as the end user will buy it and go, hey, it works great. What's the big deal? But what you don't see behind the scenes is the amount of time it spent just to get that damn thing to work right. And you can see my poor techs and engineers out here just pulling their hair out, trying to make it work. So it's a pain. So another option you can do on that is to drive it with a FET. And the way that reverb works is you bleed your signal off, you force it, you shrink it down to nothing. I mean, you shrink it to like 1/100th of what it really is. Run it through this spring, the spring vibrates. And then out the other side, you put a tube to re-amplify it back into the signal chain. Modern day FETs sound super. Now, you wouldn't want to make an amp out of FETs, but just for taking a signal and processing it like that and feeding it back in, it's a really good choice. So I'm kind of leaning towards that. Also, the FET is perfect every time. It's reliable, it's consistent, they have a warranty on them. If I go tubes, literally to get a good tube, also if I put a tube reverb, you got to add another transformer in there. So we might be able to mix it back in with a tube, but we're not going to re-amplify it with a tube, I don't think. Because realistically, I would have to raise the price on the amp about $500 to do that correctly, and that's just silly. So if I do it a little more modern way, I can raise the price on the amp $200, maybe $250 at the worst. And my argument has always been, I can't make a better sounding reverb than a Strymon Blue Sky, which is $299. So FETs replacing tubes in an amp is not ideal. Not in the regular signal chain. No, it's not. Hi, Nick, 67. And Steve Kirk brings up a very good point. It would cost you more to put a reverb as a feature in an amp than it would cost someone to buy a pedal. Sort of. I mean, we're going to do this cheaper than the Blue Sky, but what we're going to do is not nearly as robust as the Blue Sky. But the thing is, Steve, and I agree with you completely, I don't like amps with reverb in them because I prefer to control it. I'm also more of an echo guy, you know. But whatever. That's neither here nor there. what I'm finding out, Steve, is there are a lot of people that just want to have onboard reverb. Mostly Dev says reverb as an option only, I hope. Yes, absolutely. We're still going to offer the Ventura with no reverb, and you will not be forced to pay for a reverb unit you don't want to use. Absolutely. I wouldn't do that. I forgot to bring any water in here today, and I think I've told you guys I take blood pressure medicine that makes my mouth really dry, so I have to sit here and cheek out. I'm sorry. But, yeah. I mean, I get it, Steve. I feel the same way. I've had like Fender amps with reverb on them and stuff, and I don't use it. Reverb has a lot of very legitimate uses, and I'm not arguing with that at all. Dirty 59 says, what would the effect be on the original signal? Well, the way I'm going to do it, none. None at all. Nick S. brings up a very good point also. Having verb in the amp is more about convenience, and I think that's what I wasn't realizing before. So I kind of stand corrected on that. Same as pulling out the pedal board and screwing around, and I get it. And no, Peter, I'm not familiar. I've seen those amps, but I'm not familiar with them at all. Also, everyone's definition of reverb is really different. Yes, Rock and Roll Willie asked about dwell. Dwell is how long the reverb reverberates. You hit a note and it goes, bong. There's a long dwell, and bong. There's a short dwell. That's all it is. So, we are working on the circuit. I might have a prototype to play for you guys pretty soon. Jack Like says, my Maz non-reverb has more gain than my Maz. Will that happen with 65s? No, because we're not going to put the reverb in series. That's the Fender style reverb that has it in series. So your signal, you create this big, beautiful signal, and then you squash it down to nothing, run it through a spring, and then reamp it on the other side. We're going to do a parallel reverb. Nick 67 says, why not go whole hog? There's only so much you can hand wire in a chassis. You know, Sean Lehman, that's kind of what I've been doing for 8 years, is just tell people to get pedals. But they're just a bunch of guys that want it. So I'm not against doing it, and I'm not going to force you to buy it. So, but as a businessman, I'm kind of silly to walk away from sales. You know, I'm not Vincent Van Gogh. You know, I'm not going to cut off my ear and be appreciated when I'm dead. I actually got to make some money too. So, but having said that, I will do it to my standards. So for those of you that like reverb, you know, I think it'll please you. But I'm kind of with you. You know, there's nothing wrong with reverb. I just don't use it. I have a Echoplex EP3, which I think I've played on the show before, and post low pass filter and high pass filter on the reverb circuit. I'm not sure what you're asking, Josh, and it makes me dizzy. What's the difference between hall plate and room reverb? It's imitating the sound of being in a hall, like a concert hall, or in a smaller room. Or the plate reverbs are the old style reverbs where they literally had a large steel plate hanging from steel springs. And it would go, it would vibrate and resonate. That's a plate reverb. Jerry Guitar sums it up nicely. The option is good for 65 amps as a business, but it's not entirely necessary for those people who really know. That's right. And, you know, I gotta caution, you know, from talking to a lot of people about it, I kind of realized that I might have been, excuse me, a little bit, this is what happens when I talk without water, sorry. I might have been a little bit strong about that subject. And I get the whole convenience thing. I need something to drink, Jesus. Yeah, I don't think 65 is going to notice a huge boost from doing reverb, but we work with some large stores that do a lot of business with us. Like Arna in Oslo. He does $125,000 a year with us. And he says, man, I'd sell more of them if they had reverb in them. There's just guys that want it. So I'm not going to force you to buy a reverb unit. I'm not going to force you to do anything. You can still buy the 65s that don't have reverb. But, like I had a bunch of deluxe reverbs, and I always used the non-reverb channel because it sounded better. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, I might put a tone control on the reverb, Josh. We are doing hand wired here, so I have some limitations. Oh, I'll get water. I don't have any cups. That's the thing. There's water right outside here. Bob Dragic says, if you record, you can't take the reverb out, but you can always put it in. That's right. Like I said, I just don't reverb. I know a lot of guys put reverb on stuff even at the mastering phase. They record everything dry and then mix the whole record down and then put reverb on during the mastering. So there's no right or wrong here, I think, is the point. You can make reverb for the guys that want it. We are a business, and one of the things I kind of look forward to doing is making a reverb that's really good and making other people go, shit, now I got to make it that good because 65 does. I love that. Ever thought about a walkthrough meet and greet fan day at the factory with barbecue and drinks? Yeah, we did that at the old shop twice, and it was really good. I had jam sessions and everything. It was really fun. Might be hard at this place. It's a big, giant, mega factory, so it's kind of tough to do. Duct tape a Strymon to the cab. Problem solved. It's funny you say that, Chell. David Ryan Harris, who plays with John Mayer, he has a Strymon Flint taped to the top of his producer. And it sounds amazing. Bob Dragic says, I use reverb to enrich the sound a little at low volume. Yeah, absolutely. And I've never needed it with any 65 amp I've played. That's the general feedback I get, is most of my customers say, I don't really need it. I don't miss it, For live work, I find reverb doesn't work. That's right, me too. I've never used it on stage. Good tape delay is better. Me too. Absolutely, Jerry. And in the studio, they would use plugins. Yeah. You want to make your sound man hate you, use reverb on stage. Yeah, Fonzarelli, it's a verb and a trim together. It sounds good. It sounds really good. I'd love to just license that and put it in our amps. But those guys have enough business already. They don't need me. I use a bit of reverb when I'm practicing. Don't feel the need playing loud. Yeah, that's right. Well, Tom, you're a nice sound man. Every sound man I've ever seen, somebody else on the stage starts cranking up reverb. All it does is cycle through the vocal mics and makes the whole system start to cycle and howl. Yeah, I've heard the Wampler reverb's really good. I haven't played those yet, but I hear a lot of good things about the Wamplers too. I'm a big fan of the Strymons. I need to buy the Flint because I love it. It sounds real dang good. But so anyway, that's my thoughts on reverb. And obviously there's some strong opinions here. It's like we're talking about abortion or something here. But, I've seen guys, just to be fair, I know a lot of guys who use reverb beautifully, artistically, and they're great. I'm not that guy. I get reverb and just go plunk, plunk, plunk. Well, it's distracting to me. But that's the other thing. You don't want to set up your pedal board and the power and the extra cables. You just want to plug in the front of the amp, have a little verb. I get it. I mean, you know, I jam with guys that are like that. My neighbor, Mark Goldenberg, you know, who's an amazing guitar player. He plays for Jackson Browne. Always has a little verb on. It sounds great, you know, because he plays with his fingers. He doesn't use a pick. He plays really soft. And it just adds nice air and lushness to it, and that's wonderful. I play with a heavy pick, and I'm kind of an orangutan with the way I hit the guitar, so yeah, I don't know. Yes, Josh, I'll put auto-tune in for you. For a fee, I can put in anything, really. One guy on Facebook asked if I would put in sea monkeys, sparkly sea monkeys, and I said, yes, there's an upcharge for that, but we can do it. So anyway, any other thoughts on verb before we move on? I got a lot of cool questions here from the Peanut Gallery. Don't be offended by reverb. It's okay. It's not really anything to sort of hitch your wagon to. I'm a non-reverb guy. I'm a reverb guy. Therefore, we're going to duel at dawn. With my man will bring 2 pistols around. Yeah, it's just fucking reverb. Who cares? Yeah, I've had a lot of guys ask me about doing a standalone reverb too, and we might. We might just take that same circuit and put it in a box. For those of you that already own 65s and maybe want this reverb. But very much possibilities. Yes, indeed, he says. Okay. So the next question we had, someone, I forgot who it was, asked, what's the difference between an open back and a closed back cabinet? Yes. Well, it's the basic functions of cabinetry are air pressure, air volume, and speaker movement. So, you know, bigger cab, you have more air in the cabinet, so it can resonate deeper. If you have an open back cabinet, there's less air pressure in the cabinet. Because the air can get out when the speaker moves. So what happens is the speaker will move further. The cone will move further back and forth. And it has a different kind of sound. It sounds a little snappier. It'll have less bass. And you can adjust the opening in the back to play with that, sort of throttle the amount of air pressure in there, which is what we do on our 212s and our 112s. It's not really a full open back. There's a port, you know. And yeah, the closed back will have more bass because there's more air pressure in there with it closed. So it's really compressed. Boom, ba-boom, boom, boom. It's going to sound tighter on the bottom end. And the open back cabinets usually sound more articulate and detailed. And Fonz really doesn't want to know about my low end as I burp into the cabinet. So I'm sorry about that, Fonz. Open back actually a little bit louder. I think they're about the same. It's just that with the open back, there's sound getting out of the front and the back of the cabinet. Whereas Jerry Guitar correctly points out here, a closed back cabinet, most of the sound is just shooting right out the front. So with an open back cabinet, you're getting the back throw of the speaker coil as well. And that comes out the back. So you get a bigger, more washed sound. Whereas a 412 closed back is going to be just sort of nailing the people right in front of it. Whereas if you're beside it or behind it, you really just hear the thump. So an ISO cab has more bass, yeah. Depends on what kind of mic you have in there, so you can hear it or not. Like a 57, you're not going to hear it. Yeah, Chell says it's nice to use both at the same time. And if you look at like the rig that I think Hendrix used at Monterey, He had the 412 straight cabinet on the bottom was closed back, and the 412 on the top, the slant cabinet, was a semi-open back. And it's good. It's good. I personally prefer an open back cabinet on a smaller stage and a closed back cabinet on a big stage. So on a big stage, I want it just to hit me and not everybody else, so I can turn the amp up. But, you know, there's a lot of personal preference here. There's not a lot of right or wrong. So I think we got that. My favorite thing to do with an open back cabinet is put a mic behind it and put it out of phase. You get this huge sound because you get the forward throw of the cone, then you get the reverse throw as well out of the other mic, but it's out of phase. You flip the mic out of phase because the reverse throw is out of phase with what you're hearing out front. You put the mic out of phase, it puts it in phase with the front, and you get this huge sound. You know? It's very good. Any rule about placing open backs too close to the wall? No, not really. It's just up to you. But, you know, it's all fine. Tom, you're correcting me. It's all just a phase. I could be wrong. But I know if you put the back cab mic out of phase on your board, it sounds really fucking huge. Now we're making all these jokes about my low end. Hi, I'm Johnny Cash. So anyway, my favorite 6L6s, someone asked. My favorite new production 6L6s. It's kind of a moving target, to be honest with you, because all tube companies make, what's the word? How do you say it? Shit. They all have pros and cons. Svetlana's are very rugged. They take a lot of voltage. They sound a little bit like this to me. The JJs sound pretty bright. They don't have a lot of bottom end. They sound a little bit more like an EL34 than a 6L6, but they're kind of flash bulbs if you put a lot of voltage on them. The Electro Harmonix ones are pretty just kind of okay. There's actually an STR run out of Shiguang. No, there's some good there's one good 6v6 in the market right now, Marco. There is an STR, I can't remember what the number is on it. It's an STR special tube run that they make in the Shiguang factory, which I think are really meant for hi-fi stuff because they cost like twice as much as normal 6L6s. And that's what we use in the 6L6 producer. I don't know if it's STR37. I thought it was like 58 or something, but I could be wrong. It happens every day. So they just sound really good. And in our producer, you know, we're running them at like 290 volts. Voltage is not a concern. And we actually tried every 6L6 on the market, and for the producer, that was the best sounding tube. And at 290 volts, there's no worry about blowing them up. They're going to last for 20 years. So I think the normal Chinese 6L6s are kind of poop. And they would not be the choice to put in like an old Fender or a modern 6L6 amp that has anywhere from 425 to 500 volts. Those wouldn't last very long at all. You might get about 30 good hours out of them or something. So let's see. It's so Marco, you'd ask, same for 6v6. No, there's one really good 6v6 on the market is the JJ. It's really good. I mean, I think it sounds as good as any NOS thing. It just doesn't last as long. You know, like if you got a pair of NOS RCAs, they would last you for a decade of abuse. Whereas these 6v6s are going to last you 2 years, you know, maybe. But they sound really good. And as far as EL84s go, also the JJ makes a great EL84. I mean, it sounds fantastic. But again, it's very short-lived. Those Peter Donkers and asking that. So it's also those are the only two of those particular tubes, the EL84 and the 6V6, that I know of that can take voltage. Like the JJ 6V6 is the only one I know that'll work in our amps. Marco, yeah, if you're going to order from Doug, the Tungsol 6V6 sounds really good. It just doesn't like voltage. Are you going to put it in one of our amps? It'll work great in the Ventura, but it won't be real happy in the Tupelo or the Empire. Oh, for a 5E3. Yeah, that'll be fine. That'll be fine. What's your B plus voltage on that, Marco? The Wing C is the Svetlanas, the real Svetlanas. Anybody know offhand what the B plus voltage is on a 5E3 circuit, Fender 5E3? That, if you're going to get the Tungsol, they sound really good, but you have to keep them under about 400, 390 volts. I don't think a 5E3... Here, hang on a second. Let me just look. Now you got me curious. 5E3B plus voltage. Oh. It's over 400. You might want to be careful there, Marco. Honestly, you can try it. It just depends on how... it just depends on how hard you're going to run the amp. You could cool off the screen grids on that. I mean, a lot of it has to depend on how hot your screen grid is. Keep your screens down, and it should be okay. Steve Kirk says, just bought a match pair of NOS Tungsram EL84s. Oh, those are good tubes. You'll like those. The JJs I have in my Elvis now sound great. Yeah, I don't know what the screen here. Let me see what the screen voltage is on a... Because that'll really make a difference. I mean, you can run any tube pretty hot if you keep the screens down. Let's see. There's only a 470 ohm resistor on the screen, so the screen might be pretty hot. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a second. This is a replica. See, now this guy's saying that his B plus is 366. That's kind of what I thought it was. And that'll be fine with the Tungsol. But Marco, just see how hot your power transformer is. Because this is showing screen voltage at like 322, and that's cool. That's fine. So those tubes will work for you. No, 65s are adjustable bias, which is cathode bias. The name is sort of misleading. The grid bias is actually called a fixed bias, and the cathode bias is called an adjustable bias, when in fact you can adjust the grid bias and you cannot adjust the cathode bias. I think what they're really talking about is that the cathode bias circuit adjusts itself. It adjusts. You don't have to adjust it. And where with the grid bias circuit, you have to adjust it. So it's fixed until you adjust it. And with a cathode, it's adjustable, which means it can self-adjust. Tom Fox says, what do you think about spring clamps affecting tube life? No idea. I did try the Tungsol 6L6. It sounded pretty good. It sounded pretty good. I like this one that we got. We buy them from Ruby Tubes. It's a special STR 6L6. It's a weird one, though. Like, you don't see them everywhere. It's not a very common tube. Okay, 6L6s. I think we've beaten that one to death. Speaker cables. Is there a difference? Yes, there is. There's a big difference. Martin Gooseland says, can you recommend some NOS tubes for my Apollo? For the preamp or the power amp? Or both? On the power amp, my favorite old 6L6s are RCAs, with a close second being Tungsols. For the preamp tube, same thing. For the 6SJ7s, RCA, Tungsol, any of the old American companies, they all sound pretty sweet. For me, Tungsols always sound the best out of the old American tubes. I like them better than RCA. I know people kind of rave about RCA black plates, but I personally tend to like the old Tungsols. They're hard to find. They're not very common. How do I tell if my little Elvis has a Mercury Magnetics power cord? The Mercury cord is red. It should have came with one. If you bought it in the last 2 years, it should have came with one. We shipped with that. So if your dealer didn't give it to you, they shorted you. Where are you, Guitar Dom? We only give those with those are only in the United States. Mercury doesn't make the European plug, unfortunately. So that might be the reason. Okay. Speaker cables. Yeah, the materials used. Oh, you bought it in Chicago. How long ago did you buy it? Yeah, we didn't have the Mercury cables then. They only came out in 2011, I think. The Mercury cable's a good upgrade. It just adds a little more body and girth to the sound of your amp. I thought it was all hoodoo myself, trust me. And then they gave me some samples and we did a side-by-side quick change and went, I'll be damned, it sounds better. It just sounds better. I figure for 20 bucks, make your amp sound 2 or 3% better is well worth it. I'll spend that 20 bucks every week. So speaker cables, here we go. The materials used in the copper, and especially in the connector, make a big difference in the sound. The lower the quality it has, the more impedance and capacitance it has. Capacitance will be reflected as a mid-rangey sound. So like those old curly chords, how they sound really kind of like this, and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix always wanted to use them because they had this pronounced mid-range thing. I know that's an instrument cable, not a speaker cable, but it has the same effect. So the higher quality material you have, the more transparent it will be. Also, the way that the ends are put together make a big difference. You want to have heavy strain relief on those. You want to have really good shielding to keep it quiet. But you don't shield the conductor on a speaker cable. But you need to shield the connector. So, yeah, I think they make a difference. I think there's diminishing returns past a certain price point. Like an off-the-shelf speaker cabinet at Guitar Center or something for 20 bucks. Definitely sounds different than if you go up to about, a $70 to $100 cable. You'll hear the difference. You'll hear more detail. It'll be cleaner. It'll be clearer. It feels a little different. Nothing dramatic. None of this is like, you can't make a crappy amp sound good by putting a nice cable in it. That's still a crappy amp or a crappy guitar or anything. But if you have nice equipment, you'll notice a difference. When you get to these $200, $300, $400 cables, I think the amount of difference you're going to notice there isn't really worth the money, in my opinion. it's tough. Rob Clute said, "Is that why you solder your speaker leads right to the speaker?" Yes, that's right. The speaker wire is actually connected to the speaker itself, and then we just cover it with solder. So that's Colossal is my favorite cable maker. Yeah. Brian Mendes is the guy. He's on Facebook. Brian C. Mendes. I can put his link up here for you. I think he's got a Facebook page also for Colossal. They're just you guys can find it. Colossal Cable. I think it's colossalcable.com. Mendes spelled Mendes. He's on Facebook as Brian C. Mendes. Brian's a very good friend of mine. And he used to actually make those cables in our old shop for a while. We rented him some space. They're incredible. I'm not just saying that. The reason he ended up renting from us is because I was such a big, huge fan of his cables. And I think they sound ridiculous. Rob Clute says, I only say that versus the speaker tabs you see most makers use. Yeah, it sounds better if you connect it directly. Evidence are very good cables. The solid core cable is good for the studio. Which I know, Martin, I think if I'm correct, you live in the studio quite a bit. Yes, Jack, I have tried all those speakers. The solid core cable's not good for live use because it just breaks. Jack Lick says, I know you asked this earlier. I'm sorry I didn't address it. I know you have a good relationship with Celestion, but have you ever experimented with other speaker companies for your amps like Austin Speaker Works, Scumbag, and Weber? Yes, I have, and they all have their pros and cons. The main reason I use Celestion is, we buy 15 pallets of speakers a year, and most of these guys couldn't supply those in a timely manner. Also, their warranty isn't as good. And all of those companies are imitating Celestions. So I don't like the idea of selling you a speaker that's been aged also. You can age a speaker by playing it. And we do that. We beat the daylights out of the speakers here because if you just go and take the glue off the surround, you have a speaker that sounds nice and broken in and old, and then 5 years later, it sounds pretty tired. If you just take the time to break in a new speaker, you have a speaker that's going to sound good for 40 years. So, but also I have to, some of those, I'm not going to say exactly which ones, but most of those manufacturers you listed there only offer a 30-day warranty on their speakers. And I don't think I can, in all good faith, sell you a $3,000 amp that has a component with a 30-day warranty on it. And 2 of the 3 that you mentioned there, I know for a fact are actually made in China. So, and they charge a lot of money for them. I don't mind made in China. They make Apple computers in China. They make this phone's made in China, and it works great. But when you want to charge a lot of money wholesale, they make Celestions in China, some of them. Hi, Tony. I didn't even know you were here. But they're made with the English parts. They just use Chinese labor. So the cones and the voice coils and the magnets are all English. It's the same stuff. They just build them in a factory in China for labor costs. And I think the frames are made in China now. To be honest with you, when I first started buying Celestions at large levels, I was buying them from England. And then they switched over to their factory in China. And they got better. And according to the Celestion guys, who I believe, I've known them for years, they're very honest guys, it's the same exact components. They just use Chinese hands instead of English hands. And they're great. It's the same cone they've always used, the same voice coils they've used for 50 years, same manufacturer, all that stuff. So, 2 of the companies I really shouldn't say. One of the companies you mentioned actually has his speakers made by the other company that you mentioned. So that one guy doesn't actually make speakers. They're made by the other guy. and they're all made in a different Chinese factory. They use different voice coils. They use Chinese cones. Blah 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 blah. So Tony Connolly asks, how long do you burn in your cabinets? We try to do it for 48 hours of hard use. Can't always get the full 48, but usually we beat the poop out of them. So they're nice and broken in, but they're not aged. They're just broken in. You know, when you age a speaker, you're reducing its lifespan. You know, it's like aging a person. You know, women do tend to look their best in their mid-20s, their mid-30s, but then they get old really quick. So same thing with the speaker. The blue is still made in the UK. The gold is made in the UK. Peter Donkers is asking. And the Heritage line is still made in the UK. So if you get the G12H Heritage, that's still made in the UK. With the creamback and the greenback, nee. We're the knights who say, nee. You got cut off there, Chell. Try it one more time. The creamback and the greenbacks are made in China, if that's what you were going to ask. The only ones that are made in the UK are the Alnicos, which comes to one of our next subjects, speaker elements, would be the Alnicos. Oh, a good match in a 212. Yeah, they're both lower SPL speakers, and they probably go really well. It'll be a dark cabinet, though, but it'd be good. So someone had asked, what's the difference between the speaker elements in an amp? I mean, in a speaker. You mean like Alnico versus ceramic? They just have different frequency responses and the different behaviors when you pump electricity through them. So you get different sounds. The Alnicos are more mid-ranger. Bring us a shrubbery. That's right. Don't get me on Monty Python. I mean, it's only a flesh wound. That man's a king. How do you know? Hasn't got shit all over him. So Alnico magnets are much more mid-rangey and bell-tony like. They don't have a lot of bottom end. They don't have a lot of top end. But they have a lot of high mids and a lot of low mids. But it's still pretty much a mid-range power band. Exactly. What is your favorite color? We're doing Monty Python bits here now. Yeah. What is it? The flying way to the African swallow. Or the holy hand grenade. Jeez, don't get me started on that. That's arguably the funniest thing ever recorded. Whereas a ceramic magnet, much more full range. Low lows and super crispy highs. So I always think of chime of being the upper end of mid-range and the very bottom end of the treble range. And then you get into this crisp thing that's really, really bright and snappy. That's ceramics. That's like high highs. Yeah, I'll get up and do a funny walkout. Yeah, that's right. My name is Arthur, King of the Britons. I have come in search of the Holy Grail. No, thank you. We already got one. Now go away or I shall taunt you again, you English big dogs. That is such a good movie. Let's just do a whole another hour of Monty Python bits. That's right. I spit in your general direction. Your mother wore army boots and your father smells of elderberry. I fart in your general direction. Yeah. I say. It's so good. So good. Yeah. But yeah, no, he says that. Now go away or I shall taunt you for a second time. And then he turns to the other French guy and says, I told him that we already got one. That's so funny. Yeah. It's only a flesh wound. That's right. Python, those guys are amazing. Okay, tube rectifier versus solid state rectifier. Asked by our friend Tom Fox. Two really things that matter with rectifiers are rise time and voltage. Tubes have a rise time, they kind of swell and drop, and they don't produce as much voltage. A solid state rectifier just goes poof. It's consistent voltage, but it's all at once. And so it'll make your amp, bleed on you, as the Black Knight would say. It makes the amp snappy and faster. Raises the B plus voltage by 7-8%. Punchiness versus sag. Yeah, it's the sag is something you'll notice. You can overwhelm a tube rectifier, and it'll kind of go whoa, trying to do that. It just kind of goes oh my god, and then comes right back. And you don't really feel it so much as sag as you feel it as swell, because that initial transient is so strong, even though the tube is sagging, you kind of still feel okay. But then when the tube gets back to being correct, it feels like it's swelling on you. I like that better. It's much more expressive to me. Let's see, what else do we got? When to change caps on an amp. Marco, and your 5E3, go for a 5Y3 to start. If you put a GZ34 in there, you're going to really up the voltage. And you put a solid state in, it's going to be even higher than that. I think that circuit was designed for a 5Y3 or a 5U4. GZ34 will make it louder and stronger sounding, but it's going to put a lot more stress on your tubes. GZ34 is made for more juice. So someone had asked, designed for a 5Y3. Start there, try them all, see what you think. I would not do solid state. How does Neil Young get away with running his amps so hot? He's rich. So he can replace his tubes every week if he wants to. It won't hurt the amp, it's just gonna blow your tubes. He doesn't give a damn if his tube blows up. Go buy me a tube store, Put that midget in a blender, whatever. He's rich. He doesn't care. When to change caps? I'm going to get this out, I swear. So the filter caps are the ones you only really ever need to change in an amp. There's a couple of myths around this. A lot of guys go, oh, don't change the filter caps because that'll mess with the mojo. Filter caps don't have a damn thing to do with how the amp sounds. They just they make sure the amp's working correctly. But if a filter cap fails, it's going to send catastrophic amounts of voltages right down the circuit board of your amp. And you do not want that. It is not worth the risk. You put a fresh set of filter caps in your amp, it will be a little younger sounding. It will be a little snappier sounding. If you like the sound of the amp when it wasn't working right, then yeah, it does change the sound. If you have a tweed Fender, change those filter caps. I wouldn't even turn the damn thing on. I mean, filter caps are good for about 20 years. Tony Connolly says, I used to sell Neil Young's crew cases of tubes. Cases, yeah. He probably changes tubes every week. I wouldn't be surprised. Going out on a 10-week tour, you need 10 sets of tubes. There's guys that do that. Brad Paisley's like that. He changes his tubes every 8 hours of playing or something. Because he can. What the hell? There's starving kids dying of AIDS in Africa, but I want fresh tubes. Whatever. It's fine. You like that put the midget in the blender? That's what rich people do, right? Yeah. I don't care. I got more money. Yeah, put that midget in the blender, would you? Yeah, go over there and spray paint that man's car for me. Whatever. So you want to change the filter caps. If your amp's 20 years old, change them. There's just no reason not to. And it's really dumb not to. As far as coupling caps go, you only want to change those if they're leaking DC, because their job is to block DC. So if you can measure DC on the outgoing side of that cap, one side there's DC coming in, and the other side there should be none. If you can measure DC on the other side of the cap, then it's time to change it. Usually, coupling caps are good for 30 to 40 years. If you look at most Tweed fenders now, all the coupling caps are leaking DC. It's very unusual if they're not leaking DC. It'll still work when it leaks DC. It's just going to make a lot of noise. You'll hear a lot of hum. The tone will get a little harsher. Sometimes really harsh. And maybe you like that. That's okay. You're not damaging the amp. My amp makes a strange crackling when it's on. What could it be? Is it a tube amp, Tom? You know where I'm going with this, right? It's a tube. Likely. If it's a Fender amp, it could be a screen resistor, grid resistor. Grid resistors tend to wear out on Fenders and they make noise. So, all right, we're almost down to the bottom of the list, and it's 1:15, and I got to get back to work and eat some lunch and all that stuff. But the last question, and I think it was Dirty 59 asks, this is a good one. Mitch Gordon says, can leaning or standing guitar too close to a speaker cabinet or combo degauss your pickups? No. No. I mean, maybe if you put a pickup right on it, but I think you'd have to get within about 1/8 of an inch for it to start making any difference. You're fine. No worries. So, what is an Alnico 4 magnet, Dirty 59 asks? Are you still here, Dirty 59? Or I know it was like an hour and a half ago, so let's see if he's still here on the list. He's still here. Maybe he's going to watch the recording. I love these names on here. Le Big Mac 729. That's good. I like it. Was it you that asked what's the deal about Alnico 4 magnets? I think. Yes. Dun, 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 dun. Alnico 4 doesn't exist. What an Alnico 4 magnet is an Alnico 5 that didn't live up to spec. Alnico 4 is a made-up name that Gibson made up in the 50s. So now people say it's something in between Alnico 3 and Alnico 5. But it was Gibson who were buying magnets en masse of military surplus to make their pickups. And they're supposed to be Alnico 5s, and they didn't measure correctly for Alnico 5, so they just made up this term Alnico 4. It's a weak Alnico 5 is what it is. And that's just a loose classification. I mean, just because it's Alnico whatever doesn't mean it's predictable. There's 20 different kinds of Alnico 2 magnets. There's 20 different kinds of Alnico 3, 20 different kinds of Alnico 5. And then it really matters on what kind of winding you do on it and what kind of copper. Is it shielded, non-shielded? Is it coated? Is it non-coated? Does it have enamel on it? Not have enamel on it? Is it machine wound? Is it scatter wound? What's the tension on the winding? That makes a big difference. So the grade of magnet that you use is just a starting point. I know a lot of pickup companies will like to tell you that it's Alnico 4, so it sounds like a 59 Les Paul. Well, that's like saying, I made an engine that's 6 cylinders, therefore it runs exactly like a turbo Porsche. Really? What is the magnet on my lighter colored Les Paul? The neck pickup is Alnico 2, and the bridge pickup is Alnico 3 on that one. On my Cherry Les Paul, the neck pickup is Alnico 3, and the bridge pickup is Alnico 4. So, little different sound. Thanks. It's a good guitar. That one has the Ron Ellis pickups in it, which Ron sent me some more pickups. I get to play again, so I'll bring those in and play them for you. Thank you. I love that guitar too. That guitar was a gift from my wife on my 40th birthday, and it's all tricked out. It's got every tchotchke upgrade I want on a Les Paul, which is what I do to every Les Paul I buy, because they all need a little bit of love when you first get them. So usually right off the shelf, they need new stuff. So I guess I've had that guitar for 7 years, almost 8 years. I'll be 48 in August. So, well, guys, I think we got through the prescribed. I do like Jason Lawler's pickups. I have his too. I have his humbuckers in a something at home. I can't remember. Yeah, Gibson guitars are great. All you have to do is change the pickups on the pots, the nut, the tuning keys, the bridge, and the capacitors inside. And then it's great. And then have the frets redressed and get the edges rolled because they're kind of sharp on the edges. But that's all you have to do. Do I have any tell? Hey, Justin, I didn't know you were here. When is Pete Thorne dropping by? I should invite him by. I love Pete. He was a good man. Let's see. Got any Telly bridge pickups? I'm looking for something new. Yeah, I got some. I have to look and see. Next time you come down, I'll give you a few. It's fine. I got a bunch of pickups. Yeah, I mean, it's not, you don't have to change every single thing in on the guitar. Any Strat ones? Yeah, I got pickups laying everywhere. Redbone, hey, how you doing? Is that Neil? Redbone, San Antonio. Going to see the Black Crowes in Austin on Saturday. Will I see some 65s? Maybe. Rich kind of floats them around. I heard he's using them again. No, Peter, I haven't heard about this 59 that Robert has in Max Guitar in Den Haag. There's like 3 conversations going here. Sorry. I have Lawler Dirty Blondes. Yeah, Justin, I have some Telly pickups. Come on over. I think I've got like a broadcaster kind of thing, and I've got a stacked humbucker that actually sounds really good. And I've got a couple. Marco, thank you. We'll see you soon. Marco's in Brazil, I believe. Say goodbye to Marco, everybody. I'll say goodbye to me here in a minute. So, yeah. It's all good. Tom Fox says it's 6:22 a.m. here. You and Jack like. Are the early birds? Well, speaking of which, I need to go eat some lunch, and I've got a lot of work to get finished before the day's out. So, Anzac Day. All right. I don't know Bulldog pickups. Sorry. I've heard of them. I've never heard them, though. Bob, best of everything to you, too, my friend. I'm really honored that you came by. Thank you for dropping in. I don't like hot pickups. If that's what you mean, hot like strong, I don't. I think the hotter they are, the worse they sound. But even in humbuckers, I don't like anything over about 8K. Australian and New Zealand Army Corps Memorial Day. Ah, right on. Oh, happy Anzac Day. No, Hot Like Cool. Gotcha. Well, I'll check them out. I've never heard them. Seymour Duncan makes great pickups. The JB is a classic. And his 59s are great. People always forget about Seymour because he's been around so long, but especially his antiquities are fantastic. I mean, they're really good. And he can make you whatever you want. If you call over there in their custom shop, they'll make you whatever you ask them for. And they're good. They do it right. Oh, excuse me. Well, anyway, guys, it's so nice to see you and so nice to share some time with you. I can offered him an original from his father. Gibson came to the nose and measure it and make... Oh, no. I didn't know anything about this, Peter. That's great. That's good. Congratulations to Robert. That's very nice. Nice find. Definitely. Turn this a little bit. We're kind of getting out of the picture here. I'll have to look that up. Hopefully he makes a lot of money on that, or he's just going to keep it. Your sentence got a little jangled up there, Peter. I'm not sure what you're saying. It says, I, Gooey, can, in, Ant offered him an original from his father. Any stock Gibson pickups laying around? No, I throw those in the trash. I just give them to people. I just say, here, you want to pick up? Have it. I got pickups in this drawer, as a matter of fact. I think I have some Jason Lawler pickups here in the drawer. I did. Yes. I think. What's this? No, that's not it. That's after I moved. I got some Duncan stuff. I got pickups laying around everywhere. What is all this crap? I have CDs from everybody and their brother. Anyway. Hey, Scott. How are you? Good to see you. You come in at the end of the show. We've been talking about you the whole time. Oh, yes. Scott from Gear Music. Any Torontonians around? There is a nice shipment of 65s going to Gear Music in, was it Oak Park, Toronto? Anyone in Canada, as a matter of fact, you're welcome to buy from Gear Music. I highly recommend it. Oakville, I'm sorry, I apologize. My fault. Oakville, Toronto. They have a great store. I went up there and did a clinic. Peter's been there a couple times. They keep a good stock of 65s, and they give customer service that is second to none. They're Canadians. I can't help it. They're nice. All Canadians are nice. I don't want to be prejudiced like that, but I can't help it. All Canadians are nice. It's kind of scary. It is true. I mean, like, they're just crazy nice. Steve in London is on his way. You're in London, Ontario? Yeah. Go to our website, look up Gear Music, ask for Scott, who is XL72 right here. Go visit them. They've got amps on the way. 3 that just left. So they sell them all. So get over there. And yeah, we need to. Oh, we're gonna make shirts, by the way. So I need to get that artwork from Reg. Scott, can you send that to me? Have Reg do that, and we're gonna make another run of shirts. And Scott will give you a 65 amp shirt if you go over there and buy one today. Matter of fact, you should call Scott right now. That's true. These guys are so nice. Like, I went up there to do a clinic. They treated me like family. They did a gig. They organized a gig. Like, I got up and played with a band, and these people came, and everybody was so nice, and we drank all kinds of really good beer. And played rock and roll all night, and everyone in the store was sweet. We did a great clinic there. Some Canadian rock stars showed up, and we went out for dinner with these rock and roll guys. In particular, Kim Mitchell, who's one of my guilty pleasure guitar. He's so good. Kim Mitchell's just amazing. Really, really nice guy. And we went out for a steak. And he paid for it. It was crazy. It's like all Canadians are nice. I'm just telling you, they're all nice. You know, it's like my favorite Canadian joke. It's the only Canadian joke I know. How do you make a Canadian apologize? Step on his foot. They're just that nice. They go, oh, I'm sorry. Was I in your way? Yeah, Max Webster. That's right. Oh, Neil in San Antonio, man. Opposite end of the world. You know Max Webster? Yeah, Kim Mitchell's amazing guitar player. And hey, go on YouTube and look up old Max. And he's crazy as hell. I mean, he just like, you know, he's just nuts when he plays guitar. But you just listen to what he's playing, and it's outstanding. But Kim was just such a gentleman and such a nice guy. That's right. He's got a big radio show in Toronto now. And we were actually going to try to get on the show while I was there, I think. Peter Donker says, what's the way to go if you like high gain on the London but want to use a pedal just to push sustain? Use a compressor pedal? Use the Strymon OB1. Strymon OB1, like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Great compressor, has a clean booster built into it with a 3-way tone switch. It works great. And it's one of those compressors where you can play it and it doesn't feel like it's going every time you pick. You don't feel like you're playing through Jell-O, which most compressors to me feel like you're playing through mud. You know, this thing feels like it's a great compressor. Anyway, all right, I got to go. It's 1:30. I got work to do. I don't know, Scott, but I'll ask. Could you write me a note about that? And I will pass it on. I'll make sure our shipping department... I think we've already sent you one shipment from here, haven't we? We get all that sorted out? Anyway. And copy Joe. Scott copied Joe at 65 amps on that. Because he can address it better than I can. All I'm going to do is go to Joe and go, hey, man, did you guys sort this shit out? All right, fellas. Again, a real pleasure, a real honor to talk. Joe is hot. He looks like a 70s porn star. Thank you, Mostly Deaf. Hey, FS75. Frank, I didn't know you were here. Nice to see you, sir. We'll see you soon, I hope. Come on in. It's all right. Hey, you guys want to meet Gustavo? Gustavo's our international sales guy. Oh, we're about done. So,
hi.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, and I got an Agnator shirt.
I know. Where'd you get this fucking thing? So, Gustavo Afont is our man who lives in Miami. And he handles a lot of our international sales. So everybody say hi to... We're actually logging out, so we've lost half our crowd already. But Gustavo not only smells really good, but is a great sales guy and can take really good care of you. So Gustavo works with some of the other products that are either distributed or made here in this building. So if you buy Bogner pedals... you can buy them through Gustavo. If you want Agnator amps, which is why he has that shirt on, you can buy them through Gustavo. You can also, he can handle the orders for 65 amps on the international stuff. For most of you international dealers that are on here that already have a relationship with me, we'll keep it that way. That's fine. But it's okay if you hear from Gustavo also. He might call you for money. So, hey, where's my jack, dude? But he's the guy. And so if you hear from Gustavo, you can tell him, tilt the camera up here a little bit. Look at him. He's sweet, isn't he? Gustavo's a very good man and a very experienced professional salesperson. So he doesn't break legs. No, he's not the enforcer. We got another guy for that. If you ever get a call from a guy named Lagunas, you're in trouble. Anyway, that's a whole other story for next week. So, hey, man, do you want to go across the street and get food? Go get a couple tacos at the little place down here where the little mamas make everything fresh.
That'd be cool.
So I'm starving. We can talk about what we need to talk about.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay, fellas.
Everybody.
I'm going to go sign off. Once again, Gustavo. Yay, Gustavo. He's part of our team, so it's cool if you hear from him. So anyway, thank you again, guys. And I'll see you next week. Hopefully we'll be making noise. Yes? Whoops, chat window just went all the way up. Later, fellas. Nice to see a lot of you, and see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.